right, this is episode number 15 of the Sports Consiglieres podcast. I'm your host, Jim Whalen. Alongside of me is my co-host, Jerry Calla. This episode is a real treat for us. We have a living legend here, agreed to sit down with us. Two-time Super Bowl champion, played 10 years in the NFL, part of the Big Blue Wrecking Crew back in the 80s. Also, a special deputy of the Suffolk County Police Department, we just found out. And also affiliated with Long Island University. It's our pleasure to welcome Giants number 23, Perry Williams. Perry, thank you for the show. And we can't thank you enough for the opportunity to speak with you today.
It's my pleasure, guys. Thank you very much for having me on. I thank you for that nice little introduction there. I did pretty well there. It was a great experience for me, but I'm happy to be on with you guys. And we talk a little bit about life and about football a little bit.
That's it. So we just growing up in North Carolina, you went to North Carolina State. Tom Reed was your coach. What was your college career like at NC State with Tom?
Oh, NC State was a great career. I mean, unfortunately, at the beginning, my freshman year, guys, I was there. We won the ACC championship my freshman year, got a championship ring. Bo Ryan was my head coach. Unfortunately, he got killed in a plane crash after that. And he was actually leaving to go to LSU. And he had left, and obviously he got killed in that devastating situation. My last 3 years, we had a guy named Monty Kiffin. I think you may have heard that name before. He just recently passed away. And he was my last 3 years, my head coach. My defensive coach that particular last 3 years, from 80 to 83, was a guy named Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was my defense coordinator at NC State. So it was a great experience for me working with Monty Kiffin. That God bless the dead. He passed away recently, as well as his son, Lane. As we all know, he's the Ole Miss University coach now. He was my water boy at NC State. So he's doing great for himself. I'm happy for Lane and his family. And Pete Carroll, what he's done for himself over the years. You know, he had a great career, great coaching career, and I'm happy for him. And, good luck with all his endeavors. But it was a great experience for me at NC State.
Pete Carroll must have deal with the devil because it looks like he never ages. So he doesn't age.
Yeah, Pete, he got some of that young man pills. He's taking that young blood pills or something.
And then playing in North Carolina, did you cross paths with LT at all?
Yes, yeah. I actually say unfortunately or fortunately, but LT was 2 years ahead of me when I was at NC State. He was at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill there. That other school, we don't, NC State and Chapel Hill got a little rivalry going on. I get the business every now and then, fellas. My boss at Long Island University, her name is Kim Klein. She was a cheerleader at Chapel Hill when Lawrence Taylor was playing football there. So, all of a sudden going from a cheerleader to now president of a major D1 school university, that's pretty impressive. But with LT, I knew he was special. I saw him play in college. His last 2 years was my first 2 years in college at NC State. Tremendous player. You guys, most people who was watching college football back in those days, up north, you had a guy from Pitt University called Hugh Green. He was a great linebacker. And so most of the people up north was hearing about him, but LT was down here in the South, down here in the ACC country, Atlantic Coast Conference, terrorizing everything. So, obviously when he got there in New York in 1981, everybody quickly realized who he was. So he was a tremendous player, great athlete in college as well.
Absolutely, Perry. And again, listen, we're so happy you could join us. For me, this is a special treat. I mean, I look back, I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a Giant fan, I'm a Knicks fan, but there was nothing like it as a kid, the 1980s New York Giants. And again, you had a great career. You're coming out of NC State, graduate, 83, you come out as a champion, and then you really hit the Giants at the right time, 84, making the playoffs, 85, making the playoffs, and then 86, winning the Super Bowl. One thing is I wanted to mention is, before you're talking about playing for Monty Kiffin, Lane Kiffin, besides being the coach of Ole Miss, he's also a Twitter and media darling. His Twitter account is hilarious. I don't know if you ever catch that. He has his dog on there. He is really good for college football. But
I
again,
knew Lane Kiffin was going to be a special player, as not only he played in high school and college himself, but as a coach. I knew it was something special about it. At 5, 6 years old, he would always be at practice intense, working, running around the fields. The one thing he did for me, Lane always had Gatorade, a couple ice and Gatorade, and a towel at my chair, my locker, every day after practice. He did that for 3 years. And I read somewhere that he had somebody's doing that for him now. After practice, they have the coach Gatorade on the towel at his office desk. So I guess
right.
he's still pushing that towel and Gatorade stuff.
Yeah. But so you come into the Giants 84. They finished 9-7. Parcells survived. Coach Parcells survived the 83 season, and everybody says what the difference was in 84. Phil Simms became the starter. The offense started to play a little bit better. But when you came onto the season and onto the scene in 1984, who was somebody that was your mentor that was already established?
Well, of course, guys like Harry Carson. He was our defensive team captain. You followed his blueprint. He was all-pro, all-star player. The other guy, he was like a mainstay with the Giants for many, many years. George Morton, those two guys that kind of led the team. Phil Simms, of course, was the quarterback there. And but Harry and George kind of led the team. We guided the team along, and you saw the work ethic and the mindset that they had, the character and the stuff that they was demonstrating and showing the other young guys like myself. Just made it easier for us to just blend in and just go to work, as we would say, and make some stuff happen. And we was able to do that. I'm very happy and proud of that.
And again, the 84 season really established the Giants of the 80s. I mean, I remember, I grew up watching football watching the Giants with my dad. And I'll never forget, like 1981, the Giants make the playoffs. And, it was like unbelievable feeling in our household, for after so many years. Then they beat the Eagles, in the wild card. Rob Carpenter had a tremendous game. Then they lose, and they play well. Scott Bruner played well. They lose to the 49ers. But then to fast forward, 82 is the strike season. Ray Perkins leaves. 83, Parcells comes in, tries to establish a culture. A lot of roster shuffling. But then 84, I think for me as a kid that time was like, wow, I think we're on to something now. And it was an awesome time. I mean, 84, to beat the Rams, in Anaheim, in the wild card, and ultimately. That was a big deal, a road victory. Can you just tell us about that game?
Yeah. Well, going out there in 84, the season, Parcells, as you know, he was on the cutting board, and they decided to keep him. We didn't do too well, 3-12-1, as you just said early on. And then we just transitioned over. We took all the older guys, and they let those guys go ahead and go. And they brought all of the young guys in, and we had a plethora of great young guys coming in, as you know, Andy Hayden, Terry Kennard, just to name a few, was just coming in, and we were getting ready to rock and roll then. Jeff Hosteller, we had drafted him as a quarterback coming in, and Carl Banks. I can go on and on, but coming together, we realized and we understood that in order to be successful, we had to work hard and work as a unit collectively. The one guy, and I will say this, many people may have heard of him, maybe more than likely not heard of him. His name is Johnny Parker. Johnny Parker really was the one who helped galvanize and get this team ready to rock and roll. And I mean by that, he was our strength and conditioning coach. They had hired him. He was his first year in 84. And we turned around. I think we had 25, 26 guys on the injury reserve in 83. In 84, we had one. So Johnny was the one who was instrumental. I've said that, and I hope the world will see this. And for hearing it from me, I was there to see this with my own two eyes. He helped turn that team around and for us, the players who was concerned to keep them on the field and keep them healthy. But, you get banged up. That's the nature of the game. But Johnny was instrumental part of that. I want to make sure people understand that and know that Johnny was he was a heck of a coach. I had the privilege of working with him 9 or 10 years out of my career. Johnny. But then we bought into the concept and what we were trying to do. You got Parcells, of course, the head coach, and Bill Belichick running our defense, being the defense coordinator. He was, as I've said to other people in the past, Belichick was like if you could use the term, he was like a genius of football. I mean, I really believe that. I mean, this guy was, spectacular. I don't know how in the world he knew all that stuff, but he knew it, and he studied and worked on it, and he was a great gift for all of us. So we all worked together cohesively, and we started believing in one another. That's the key, to this whole thing, guys. Believing that you can achieve it. And so once we started believing, plus on top of that, we had a bunch of young guys. You're talking about in 80, 84, we had 20, well, at least 20 something guys, very young, but within three or 4 years under their belt or less. And it became what I call hungry. We was hungry. We was young, vibrant. We had a lot of energy, and we just took it on one step at a time. We just built the building, the blueprint, if you will. And we just kept moving. And that's how it started for the 84. Then we just built on from there.
I mean, Perry, that's a great, a great way, a great breakdown there. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago, and the first person you mentioned is the strength and conditioning coach, which is tremendous, because obviously 40 years ago, he really must have made an impression, on you guys that first year. And I actually know who Johnny Parker is, and because I used to study the yearbooks. I'm not gonna lie. I knew the whole coaching staff, from Lamar Leachman to Ronnie Barnes. But I'll never forget a quick story. You mentioned Andy Hedden. I think that might have been the first time I cried as a kid, when Andy Hedden, and this is for our producer, had the interception against the Cowboys and ran about 80-something yards into the end zone. I think that was the first time that I cried as a kid. So, tears of joy, of course.
That was a game of the Giants, because I remember they were featured in Sports Illustrated, and that was like the first time everybody got Sports Illustrated. That was the first time the Giants were featured in Sports Illustrated. I remember cutting photos out of the Giants, especially with Andy Hedden with that interception. So,
yeah,
but I mean, that was a big game for you guys. But moving on to the 85 season, you guys are moving on to the 85 season. You guys are 10-6. You're going into the playoffs. What was the mindset going in? You knew you had the team. The Bears are waiting. What was it like going into that Bears game in 85? Because they had,
we knew that they had a great team. In the mindset of, from 84, we made the playoffs. We got a feel, we got a taste of what it feels like. It tastes like to be in the playoffs. And then 85, I'm sorry. When we went there 10-6, now we was going another step. We were just going through the process, going through the steps, and we knew we had a tough challenge to go against the Bears. They was a tremendous team, taking nothing away from them. William Perry and the great late Walter Payton and McMahon and Willie Go. I mean, you go on and on. McMichael, a lot of those guys. They had a great team. Dent, I think he was the defensive tackle, whatever it was. All these guys, it was good. And it was a learning lesson for us, because we didn't do too well there. It was 19 below zero in Chicago in that playoff game. And we lost. But it was a lot of people may not know this, but we made a pledge on the plane coming back from Chicago back to New York, New Jersey, to Newark International Airport, that we was going next year. We was going to take this thing all the way. We made a pledge, and most people would not know that unless you was on that plane. All of us got up and basically one by one made a pledge that we was gonna go all the way to next year, and we did.
Start that off, or was it something collectively you guys were that you heard about the 80s team, how tight were, but who kind of just started getting that conversation going on the plane? Or was it just like
Phil Sims? Phil Sims.
Yeah.
Phil Sims started off, and then we had a few guys. Harry Carson stood up. We had a couple other guys. I can't remember in alphabetical order who got up. But I knew then that I made a comment. I made a comment to myself and to a couple of guys in the back of the plane, and we're gonna take this thing. And we had made a pat to each other. We're gonna take it all the way. And that's what obviously Chicago ended up winning the Super Bowl. We had a great year, no doubt about it. We had a great team. Had a good coaching staff there. But the next year, was a whole different story.
Now, Perry, would you say, sticking with the Bears game, I've heard Phil Sims say this, I heard Carl Banks say this, would you agree with their assessment that the Bears showed you, if you will, how physical and tough you really need to be? Like Carl Banks said, you guys, especially on defense, felt that you were physical and tough.
Yeah.
He said when you played the Bears, they had it dialed up a little bit more than you guys. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I would agree with that to a certain degree. Yes, I would. Carl Banks, a hell of a player, a great football player, no doubt about that. And I would agree to the point of, we had the physicality we had, but the thing is, what had the Chicago Bears really clicking was confidence. They had that confidence. Not only did they have that physicality, they had confidence. And then once we learned to do that and work from the physicality and the confidence, and you don't have to say that you're cocky and arrogant and braggadocious, but you're talking about you going out there knowing that you're gonna get the job done. And that's what they had on the edge they had in that 85 season. They played with full confidence. And I realized that for us in 86, when we started winning, and we took it all away. Man, it was a vote of confidence. It was an air about us that we knew when we ran on the field, nothing was going to stop us. So, but I agree with that assessment what Banks said. Yeah.
And moving on to 86 season, you rattle off nine straight, and then you go into the playoffs. I mean, you single-handedly beat San Francisco 49-3 at the stadium. I remember with all the toilet paper going on, and then you had to beat Washington 3 times in the season. They beat them 17-10, and Washington was a good team back then. You just talk about a little bit that playoff run and just the atmosphere in that San Francisco game. Jim Burt knocking out Montana, and it just I think that game really sticks in a lot of Giants fans' memories as like the game, because San Francisco, a lot of times I've been sitting in that stadium and that Jerry Rice, that ball just pops right in his hands, and then they just made it look easy. But going back to that San Francisco run and that Washington game, just leading up to in 1986.
Yeah, well, we ran the table a little bit, and we went there and we got in the playoff. We played the 49ers and Joe Montana and Steve Young and the Jerry Rices of the world and all the Roger Craigs, these guys that they had back then. Great team, great coach Bill Walsh. They had a great organization, of course, and great players. But it was just, as you were saying earlier, we was a little bit more hungrier than they were. And then they had us, for a minute, and Jerry, they run in and caught the ball and run and drop the pass and whatever, drop the ball, fumble the ball, whatever you want to call it. And it was a turn of the game right there. And then we turned the dial up. And we said, well, now we're going to take it to them. And that's ended up what we did. And, we had a way of doing that. It was pretty amazing back then at that time. When you speak on it, and I think about it, and I really go back in time, we could turn the switch on anytime we wanted to. And when we turned the switch on, it was like everything was full tilt, full force. And it was great. And so Jimmy knocked out Joe Montana, great player, without a shadow of a doubt, Hall of Famer. And, that was kind of turning the game right there. And we got him out the game. Steve Young, not taking nothing away from him. He's a great player too, of course, Hall of Famer. But I just think then when the home field advantage in Giants Stadium was rocking a little bit, and we just got our mojo going, as some ones would say, these guys. And it was great. It was a great feeling, and we was able to win the game, and we took it to the next phase, and to be able to beat Washington 3 times in 1 year, that was pretty amazing, remarkable, and amazing. And they had a great team, Joe. The head coaches over there, Joe Gibbs, and the rest of his staff, and the great quarterbacks and players they had over there as well. They had Dexter Manley. He was a monster. But all those guys could play as well. And just so happened it was our day. It was in Giant Stadium, Giant Nation, and nobody could stop us. And we won that game. And then from then on, as you guys know, we moved on and got ready for Pasadena, California.
I mean, the one thing, like you said, I just want to touch on the point you made, how when you guys turned it up, you turned it up to, another level. And I just remember the Washington, the NFC Championship, the wind, the howling wind, all the debris that was blowing around. But I just remember the one player on the Redskins, Kelvin Bryant. I just remember him. They were trying to slip him into the flat, trying to throw to him, trying to run to, and I just remember him just getting pounded on the turf. The physicality that you guys displayed in that game. I mean, of all the games that season, that game really resonated with me because, again, you're fighting the elements. Jay Schrader got frustrated, but I just remember, if you look back at the highlights, it was, Calvin Bryant getting pounded into that old, Giant Stadium turf. And then, for Sims to score to hit Manuel, and, Joe Morris had, I believe, a Russian touchdown. And, Landetta, again, was phenomenal, as he always was, in the elements. And, like you said, that was a great run. Now it's interesting because I think at that time, a lot of people were hoping for an old school Giants-Browns matchup. Obviously, Elway had a lot to do with that not happening. So now my question is, how did you feel? Because, again, you had it in your back pocket, if you will. You beat Denver on that tremendous athletic play by George Martin earlier in the year at Giant Stadium. But how did you feel going into the Super Bowl facing Elway?
Confidence. We was confident. Elway is a great player. No, taking nothing away from him. Here you go again. It's another Hall of Famer, and tremendous athlete, two-way athlete, baseball as well as football back in this time. We had full confidence that we can handle them. That's what we went into with the mindset. We're go rush him. We're gonna try to rattle him, get him all stirred up a little bit. And if we can get him rattled a little bit, then maybe we can control him, and things can happen for us the way we wanted to execute our defense when Belichick had devised and put together. And but yeah, we knew that you couldn't go to sleep on Elway because he run one way and throw the ball 60, 70 yards the other way. So you had to keep your eyes on this guy. And he was a great player. But we went in there with to answer your question, we went in there with full confidence, knowing that we was going to take it to him. And even though it might not look like that at the game, and we wasn't winning at halftime, but when that sun went down and got a little cooler out there in Pasadena, we turned the heat up really. We cooled off, as we would say, a little bit. And once we got back into the second half, and there was lights out then.
Absolutely. Tremendous moment in Giant history. In my opinion, one of the biggest moments in Giant history. Because I think as a fan, and like we said, I mean, I'll reference my dad. I mean, my dad as a kid, he had Gifford, Sam Huff, those guys, Charlie Connolly.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The 70s was dry, as we all know. And then it was like, are the Giants ever going to, for a flagship franchise, are we ever going to win a Super Bowl? And, 86 was, getting to the top of the mountain.
Oh, yeah. And there was no doubt about it. So, I mean, there was no doubt about that. Everybody was expecting it, and you guys delivered. So it was really something to see. That season in 86.
Yeah.
So moving on at the 87. So do you think that there was a hangover for that 80s going into the 87 season, or like what happened in
it was
87?
A combination. I'm coming in the 87 season. It was a strike year. We went on strike after the first month. It kind of threw us in off the edge a little bit. Guys trying to get the walk-ons or the scabs or whatever they was calling them to come in and play the games and whatever. And guys, we were just trying to figure out our way through the Players Association, NFL Alumni Association, how we was going to do this or that. And by the time we did get back in there, the games that the other replacement men, I should say that, use that term, played for us, they didn't do too well. So we were playing behind the 8 ball to try to catch up. We almost caught up to get back in there, if you remember. But this didn't work out for us in 87 that year. It was disappointing. But at the same token, in the end result, the free agency and all that stuff with the union, it prevailed, and things happened later on after that. So, it was a tough year for me.
They played 3 games in a strike.
Yeah, it was a strike year. So I was there, and where I'm at right now in North Carolina, at my house, sitting and working out by myself until we went off strike, and then everybody came back together. But it's the momentum, this synergy was a little different. We was off a little bit, was missing, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and that we never was able to regain where we needed to go for that time frame for that particular year.
Then we'll, again, that was just, I think, a very weird time in the NFL, but ultimately, the union had to do what it had to do to really make a lot of changes, which ultimately, benefited the players and, benefited the game. Now you come into 88, expectations are still high. Obviously, it ends, it's like a dagger in your heart with the Flipper Anderson game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm correct, right? 88, right? That happened after 88?
88, 89.
No, I'm sorry.
I think.
88 was getting eliminated on the last day of the year. The Jets beat you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that was a sad day for me,
Yes,
for
correct.
the whole Giant nation.
If I remember correctly, I know. If I remember correctly, Ken O'Brien drove them down the field, and then the Giants needed the Rams, I believe, to beat the 49ers for you to get in, and that didn't happen. And then, so, again, that was disappointing, because, again, you tell people now, they look at you sideways. That year, 88, you guys finished 10-6 and didn't make the playoffs. Nowadays, that would never happen.
That is correct.
I mean, pretty much 10-6 now. 10-6 is getting you in with the extra wild card spots. So now we fast forward into 89. Expectations are high, and again, that season, talk about ending abruptly. The one thing that I wanted to say, and I think it kind of puts it in perspective about sports, is 89. Everett gets you with Flipper Anderson. Mark Collins is covering Flipper Anderson. And I always was a big Mark Collins guy. I mean, all the 80s Giants. I'll never forget, years later, many, many years later, I was reading an interview, and Mark Collins admitted that he probably shouldn't have been in the game, right? That he had an injury. And the question was, how come you didn't bring that up in 88? And because the class act that he is, he said, he goes, I didn't want to take away from Flipper Anderson's moment, using that as an excuse. But let's put that aside, and I'm sure, obviously, you know better than us, but putting that aside, what do you think? Were you surprised how well the Rams played in Giant Stadium to get to that overtime, or what do you think was some of the things going on? I know turnovers were an issue, but looking back on that game, what's your assessment now about that game years later?
Yeah, we was playing in our comfortable positions as we always did. We had our flow going and our mojo going, but we was tempering off a little bit. We wasn't hitting strides the way we needed to hit it. We wasn't making plays of shutting them down when we really needed. We were making plays, but we weren't making them enough, I believe. And they was able to come back and get back in the game. And with that one particular play, and they threw the ball, a long pass to Flipper Anderson, and Mark had, apparently a lot of people wouldn't know this, but he broke his ankle the play or two before. And he was trying to still go out there and play. And I was hoping that we wouldn't go into that particular call. And we got caught up. I don't know if the coaches over there knew that Mark was hurt like that. And I knew something was wrong with him. I knew something was wrong with his lower leg. And of course, if you go back and watch the film, I was running like hell to try to get over there to make the tackle. I mean, I was running from the other side of the field, full speed. But, he was able to catch the ball on the fly and ran through the end zone, and the game was over. That was probably one of the saddest times and down times I ever had with my whole career with the Giants. We let that get away from us, and unfortunately, my guy Mark, he and I played together about eight years, consecutive years. He was on the left side, I was on the right side, and I knew something was wrong with him, and I just hated that. But he was a great player, and it was just one of those situations that happens. In football, you've heard that in sports, and it's in life in general. Any given Sunday.
Sure,
things happen, and we just wasn't able to get it. We wasn't able to get it done the way we needed to get it done, and no faults in nobody throwing fingers at. But I wish that we could, that would not have happened. And obviously Mark Collins would have been, sound and well in his body, whatever, with his lower leg injury, not having that, he'd been all over the guy. Right. I knew when the ball went up in there, and Mark, something was wrong with him. And but to this day, I think about it every now and then. But we went on, and as you go, we'll allude to as we move on. That was in 89. Now we're moving on up to the next year. Then we went from that to doing what we had to do again the next year.
Did you guys regroup at all?
Go ahead, Jimmy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I said, did you guys regroup at all in the off season? And same thing like the plane ride back from Chicago. Did you guys?
Oh, yeah. You guys yeah. Parcells, if you don't know, Jerry, I'll just tell you guys, Parcells cried like a baby. in the meeting, went in the locker room, after we went in the locker room to team meeting room, we all gathered after the game. And I've never seen him emotional like that. He cried. I mean, you could uncontrollable. We let it get, it happened. It happened, just due to the circumstance, the situation at hand. And we vowed then we'll be back next year. We'll be back. And that's what happened. Yeah.
I mean, again, I think from a fan's perspective, what was so special about the 1980s Giants, and I'll probably get criticized for this, but that's okay. So you look at like 84, you kind of set the, you get the train going on the right track. You make the playoffs. The 84 experience takes you into 85. The 85 experience takes you into 86. 87's the strike. 88, takes you into 89, and then 89 takes you into 90. And I think, and this is what I'll probably get criticized for, today's NFL probably has something to do with guys are basically jumping teams more. Free agency is different, salary cap cut, casualties, so on and so forth. But I think in those 80s with those Giants teams is, yes, the Flipper Anderson game was disappointing, but that shaped the following year. Al Toon scoring in 88, ending the Giants season was disappointing, but it shaped the following year. You don't have that in today's NFL. And to be honest with you, a lot of teams, that would have lost to the Bears in 85, 21-0, and got physically smacked around, wouldn't be able to recover and rebound the following year. There would be a 2 or 3 year hangover. A coach would have lost his job, in today's NFL. And that's what I think was so special. Like you said, you and Mark played together for 8 years. I look at as a kid, Giants secondary, Terry Kennard, and then a fast forward, you had Myron Guyton. I mean, just the amount of players that played together. But, that 84 on, I mean, it was a big deal, and I just think in today's NFL, that's the difference. You had to go back then. People had to get playoff scars to go forward. The Bears just didn't start out in 85, being the 85 Bears. They made the playoffs a little bit when Jim McMahon kind of solidified the offense, and then the defense kind of took over. And, again, you don't really see that. Now we have Kansas City making a good run, but you don't really see people rebound. I'll use Buffalo as an example. Buffalo today, I love Josh Allen. I think they're an exciting team, but they've had a few bad playoff losses, and instead of going forward, it seems they're going in reverse. Coach McDermott is on the hot seat. You just didn't have that, with those Giants teams. And that's what made it fun as a fan. It was like, all right, we had a bad playoff loss. You're disappointed. Players are disappointed. Fans are disappointed. But, man, I'll never forget in 85 when that Bear game ended. I'm sitting there watching the game with my dad, as I watched pretty much all Giant games my whole life. And I was like, I cannot wait for next year. And then next year comes, and for opening night, you guys lose against Dallas on Monday night. Herschel Walker has a good game. And then it's like, you still felt we'll be okay. You get to week 2, you survived the Raiders game out in the Coliseum. Then you absolutely destroyed Dan Fouts and the Chargers. And now we're like, you know what? Now we're rolling. And that kind of set the tone of that 86 team.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was just, again, I'm sitting here, I'm getting emotional talking about it. That 86 team was unbelievable in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, we had great players. There's no doubt about it. Throughout my whole career there, we had great players on the team. But that 86, 87 team was magical. And the guys is full of confidence. We, as I said early on, fellas, we could turn the switch on when we wanted to. It was, all right, guys, it's time to get it. We just turn like a light switch. We just turn it on and go play ferocious. And that was the great thing about the thing that I talk about, especially with young people, young men and young women and student athletes or whatever, is the want to attitude. That's what it really boils down to, this stuff. It's the want to attitude. How bad do you want it? You just want to be happy and go complacent and just go through the motion just to get by and say I'm on the team, or I'm, especially in pro football, getting paid just to be on the team and just happy. My goal was not just to go there and get a paycheck. My goal was there to win games and win championships, because championships lead to other things and to where I am today. I said that. I know we still on the subject matter here, stay on the topic, but that changed my life because I wanted to make sure that I gave it my all, and I always, and to this day, wanted to make sure I made the New York Giants fans proud that Perry Williams was on the team, that he gave his all every time he went out on the football field. And he wasn't no knucklehead out in the streets doing all kind of crazy stuff. I mean, when it came time to play the games, he showed up and he, did what he had to do, take care of business. And that was my thing for me. Yeah.
It definitely did, Perry, because I mean, we know it. And then, like I said, you're the secondary back then. I mean, you definitely, I didn't forget you. I mean, and the memories at that time is just like you were part of that cornerstone of that defense. There was interchangeable pieces. You all played at once. So I mean, and it really was a time in New York sports that is unmatched. I mean, in football.
Yeah.
But if we could just turn to 1990, you guys I think are 10-0. I think Phil Simms goes down with an injury.
Yeah.
So what happened in the locker room then? And you guys turned to Hostetler, so obviously it wasn't that much of a drop off. But I mean,
right. Well, to answer that question, these guys, we were rolling. Phil got hurt. So it's almost like you've heard this old adage, saying, "The next man up." And I had full confidence that Jeff Hostetler could play. I knew he was a great player. I watched him in practice. When you go on to practice and in training camps or whatever, he just didn't have a chance to get into the games that also obviously in the lineup. But I knew he could play. I didn't doubt it one iota. I knew that Jeff Hostetler was going to help us, and he took us to the promised land. And I'm indebted to him and grateful to him forever. I was down here. Well, I live in North Carolina, so I was down in South Carolina. I was playing golf down there several years ago, and the guy came through and stopped at this gas station where I was at getting some gas, and the guy said, I saw his license plate, West Virginia. I said, yeah. And then I started just dropping name, of course. I said, yeah, one of my good friends. I didn't tell him that I played ball at one point. So a good friend of mine from West Virginia went to the university there, a football player. You ever heard of Jeff Hostetler? They were just went, wow, yeah, Jeff Hostetler, great player. And I never told him that I played for pro ball with Jeff with the Giants, but I knew Jeff was, and I said that to say this, that Jeff Hostetler was a leader, man. He was a warrior. He's tough. He could run. He was mobile, agile. He could do it all, basically. But the one thing that I knew about Jeff Hostetler, he had that steel wheel mentality, and that's what I talk to young people about. You got to have that steel wheel. If you don't have that steel wheel, you're not going. Your will will always supersede your skill, and that's how I feel. Your will will always supersede your skill, and he imposed his will, and the rest is history.
And absolutely, and going through that playoff run, you guys avenged Chicago at home 31-3. I mean, I was at that game. It was cold. It was a cold game. And then you move on to San Francisco and you beat San Francisco 15-13. Obviously, everybody remembers the Leonard Marshall sack. But just talk about, San Francisco, once again, they're San Francisco 49ers. But, going into that game at San Francisco, could you just talk a little bit about that game going on to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, they went out there. Hey, we got to go out there and play San Francisco, fellas, and that's what everybody was saying in the locker room. Hey, another trip. We go out there, San Francisco, and knew that they was at home field advantage. They had the fan base, and they thinking that hey, we're getting ready. Now I do know this. Maybe both of you guys may know this story or know of it. San Francisco, when they went down there, they already called the people in Tampa to bring their equipment down there ahead of schedule because they knew they had it in the bag to beat us. And I heard that. I don't know how true that was, but they said they bought a lot of their equipment down in advance. Flew it down or whatever, how they got it down there. And after we beat them in that game, then they had to go and clean that locker room out and get all that stuff back out of there to bring the Giants stuff in. So, but Leonard Marshall, did the Joe, almost killed Joe Montana, and great player as he was. But we was on a mission. And I was just so happy that we was able to go to that next phase and go to as they say, the Super Bowl 25 down in Tampa. And Matt Barr, our great kicker we had at that time, he kicked that field goal and made it. And here we go. And we on our way from California, San Francisco to Tampa. We weren't going back to Jersey. We went straight from San Fran to Tampa, Florida, and get ready to play, in the Super Bowl 25 there. But yeah, Joe Montana again. These guys, I have the most respect for all those guys. Jerry Rice, these guys are great ball players. And these guys, you can't take nothing away from them. They had their run, and at that time we was had a nice little run, and we was kind of moving up to that next one. We had transition, as you guys already know this. A lot of the guys, some of the guys we had when we was in the 86, 87 season had moved on and retired. George Morton, Harry Carson, those guys are gone. They had retired. But we stepped in. Then we had like Pepper Johnsons and all those kind of guys that stepped up in there, man. And it was tremendous play with all these guys, being there. And we just played with the continuity and play with the teamwork mindset, and we did well.
And I think too, Perry, as a fan, what really made an impression in that 90 team is the Marshall hit on Joe Montana. What he did to get to that point. He was on the ground. He didn't stop running. He was crawling. He got up. And I think that was one play that really epitomized that Giant team. Scrappy, never giving up. I mean, if you watch that play, he just didn't blindside Joe Montana. He was on the ground, crawling, getting himself up, and he never, ever, ever stopped pursuing. But I think it's funny is because if you look at your career, you have 2 Super Bowls. And I think what is you have to be proud of is the first one. There's really nobody that expected you guys to lose to the 49ers in 86 in the playoffs at home. Then there's nobody that I don't think expected you to lose to the Redskins in the NFC Championship. And then I think even nobody expected you to lose to Denver. But now, fast forward to your second Super Bowl. Yes, most people thought you'd beat the Bears at home, but I don't think there's anybody or hardly anybody that thought you were going to beat the 49ers in the middle of a three-peat, then let alone, because I think I knew a lot of Giant fans after that 49er game. They were like, listen, we made the Super Bowl. We're happy to make the Super Bowl. Nobody thought you were going to beat the K-Gun offense and Jim Kelly. And I think in comparison, that was 86 was special because that was the first one in franchise history. But 90, I think that the trophy shines a little brighter because there is nobody, even the most diehard fan, didn't realize or didn't really expect you guys to beat the Bills, let alone come out with two down linemen, the defense that you played. I mean, again, that game, that Super Bowl, the 49er game was one thing, but now fast forward to the Super Bowl. I mean, everybody talks about, Norwood missing the kick. Everybody, of course, talks about OJ with, I believe, 102 yards. I think what gets forgotten in that game, and don't quote me on the number, I think Banks had like 13 or 14 tackles, and Landetta's punting average was like phenomenal that game. And I think those are 2 points. The defense in general, of course, obviously did a great job. You knew they were going to score. You slowed them down, took them out of the rhythm, which was with the game plan. But I think the 2 points out of that game is how well Carl Banks played and how well, as usual, in a big spot, Landetta punted the football.
Oh, yeah, so, absolutely. Absolutely. I concur on everything you said there because Carl Banks had a hell of a game. I mean, he was all over the field. We always hitting them guys. We was tagging them. We was hitting them. It was a slug fest. And Banks was out there just slugging away, and we always slugging. And, Sean kicking the ball the way he did. Tremendous player, great guy, great player. So happy that he was on the team there with us. And with that alone, I was a model of that particular game, especially in the second half, is just keep pounding them, just keep hitting them. We gotta keep striking them, and we just kept striking. It was coming. Ain't no doubt about it. Jim Kelly and the rest of that game, Thurman Thomas. Those guys, they was bringing it. They were bringing the heat, and we was bringing it back. We was a slugfest. They had weapons. They had weapons. No doubt about it. And to be able to go and play against Jim Kelly, another great ball player. I played against Jim when I was in college at NC State. Jimmy was at University of Miami. His senior year was my senior year at NC State. They beat us down there. So that's like a little revenge from back in
There you go.
maybe this in college. Then I got him back in the in the NFL.
You got it when it counted. So you got it when it
Oh
counted.
yeah, exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
Perry, you talked about, we covered your, we touched upon your career at NC State. We talked about your very, very great NFL career. And now, when we spoke the last time, you were saying how when you were on the, with the Giants, you wound up staying with the education route. You went to FDU. And let's just really get to, and you referenced this on how when you speak to student athletes. So let's just kind of bring our listeners into what you did after football and, what you're doing now.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, fellas, after the 93 season, it was over for me. I retired in 94, 95, or actually in 94, going into 95, I transitioned from the football field to the classroom. I went and got involved with Farrell Dickinson University. Prior to that, I got involved with Farrell Dickinson University in New Jersey, in Bergen County, New Jersey, to continue there. Because I went back and took classes so I could finish up my undergraduate degree from NC State. And I did that. I ended up getting my criminal justice minor in psychology undergrad degree. And while on the way, I went on and fellas, I did something that I thought I'd never do. I went to grad school, and I started that grad program in 1989. And about 1991, I was finished with my graduate. So what's so significant about 1991 was that was the year of the Persian Gulf War. That was the year of the Super Bowl in 25 in Tampa, and Whitney Houston sung the national anthem that particular evening, that night. And boy, that was a fire. It was a really revved up night. And we ended up, as we just talked about, we ended up winning the game. But what's so significant about that for me was in June of 91, that was in January of 91, June of 91, I received my master's degree from Farrell Dickinson and in public administration. It was a great year for me, to have a second Super Bowl and then have a graduate degree under my belt. Yeah. Played 3 more years after that, retired, as you know, and then I had an offer by Farrell Dickinson University to be there with them. I was there for 22 years, lecturing and teaching leadership classes. I was outreach director of outreach for the university, like a face of the university, recruiting, open houses, and stuff like that. I did that for many years, and then I transitioned and went and I got an opportunity here. This is my 6th year at Long Island University, and that happened in 2019. I got a call from my former. Well, he's still my great friend, still my lawyer as well. This guy named Marshall Rosenthal out in Long Island, New York, out there in the Great Neck area. He called me and said that this college wanted to talk to me, Long Island LIU. And I talked to them and I got on board in 2019. Then starting next month, a few days from now, I'll be 6 years, starting on my 6th year at Long Island University. I'm working as the sports management director from the academics department. Most people think when I say sports management that I'm coaching. I'm not coaching. I'm actually in the classroom, working and doing our academic program that we have there. We are growing tremendously. I'm happy and proud of my team of people that I have with me at the university. We started out with 11 kids in 2019. Now I'm over 170. And still pushing to go up and for our program to build the program up. I have a host of practitioners, I call them, great men and women who's from the sports world, and they also are corporate men and women. One of my right hand people there, her name is Elizabeth Mello. She's tremendous. She's a track and field marathon runner herself. She comes from that sports industry world a little bit, and she's got that corporate background from being a former CFO of an international accounting firm in New York City. So what I purposely done, fellows, is I try to go get men and women that come from the sports background, but and engage these young men and the young women on the career planning and the different job opportunities that you have out there. And I'm happy to have those kind of people with me as we speak right now. We just started last year at LIU, our graduate. So we have a graduate master's degree program in sports management now as well. One of the people, I drop her name, she's a niece of Patrick Ewing. She's a former basketball player. She was on the Jamaican Olympic team in 2012. So TJ, she's with us. So we got different people. I got a guy, a sports agent, Andrew Sack. He's out of NYU, so he knows sports. He knows negotiations. So I try to get people to fit into, what we're trying to do here with the kids. And more important, being engaged, learning for these young men and young women. And sports, as you know, is never going nowhere, fellas. Sports is here. You got all these different sports out now. Pickleball and some of these cornhole. I mean, this is internet phenomenal sports is getting. So I tell the young men and young women all the time, especially mothers and fathers on recruiting. We have open house that sports is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. People going to participate in sport. People like the challenge. People like the energy and the synergy of all of that stuff. So we're doing very well with that, and I'm happy with that. I'm happy to be a part of that team and be the part. And I don't like to say that I'm the director of the program or this and that through the title aspect of it, but I'm part of the team. And I got a team of men and women that's helping me. Obviously, the president of the university, Kim Klein, she runs the operation. Of course, she's the catalyst, and she give me the mojo every now and then. Being, as I told you guys early on, she's from Chapel Hill, and was at NC State in college at one time, but now we on the same team. So she don't give me the business too bad now. But so with that being said, guys, I'm doing that. I do a lot of outreach speaking. I do a lot of motivational calls for corporations, corporate Fortune 500 companies I've had the privilege and honor to speak at and with. I guess the one proud moment, if I want to brag to you guys, and then your open fan base here, your open audience, I had the privilege in 2018 to speak to the Pentagon. They invited me to be the keynote speaker to the Special Intelligence Department. And they asked me to speak on leadership that night. So my topic that night was what it takes to be a winner. So I'm proud of that night.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much basically, guys, what I'm doing with the classes. We got a plethora of great people. We in a great school that we have, the private school there we have. Now when I started, we became a D1 school now at LIU. It used to be CW Post. But we consolidated with the Brooklyn campus and the Long Island campus and the Brookville campus. And then we got one big unit there. We also work with the Rock Nation. We have the Rock Nation group there with Jay-Z and Beyonce, of course, you know that name. For the music, the sports entertainment, and the sport and music world that they have a curriculum set up there at the Brooklyn campus. So I go out there periodically with that as well and doing, presentations and speeches and, a lot of motivational speeches and stuff like that.
Perry, just to follow up, you said outreach, right? So now, if I'm correct in saying this, so you would come speak to like high school programs, is that correct?
Yes. High school programs. I do a lot of high school programs. It's part of our recruiting tool that I go out and do that. And then I do a lot of banquets. They ask me to come do a lot of luncheons. I do a lot of lunches, corporate lunches, or go to school and higher educations or whatever. And I just did a thing in the summer. I had to go to Atlanta, Georgia. I did Atlanta Tech College down there on leadership and team building. So this is a student body department there that I did. So I kind of became a jack of all trades. And pastor. I do a lot of different things, but I do a lot of things collectively and working cohesively as a group. So, but I have people that's working with me. And that's the beauty of this thing, because teamwork makes the dream work, fellas. And I know that all too well. I learned that from the sports industry, the sports world, growing up as a young guy in North Carolina here, all the way up until I got to New York. And I knew if we win and we work as a team, work as a unit, we had a chance to be very successful. And as you guys know, as you noted on, when we're talking today about the good old yesteryears. But that's what we demonstrated. We demonstrated, this great character, great integrity, great work ethic, and you put all that stuff together, then you got a chance to be successful.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, Perry, thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time. I think this is probably the longest interview I think Jerry and I ever had. So
man. I'm always glad to talk to Giant Nation people.
Listen, we're welcome to have you. But just leave off at a couple points. You still have the Perry Williams camp. So that's
we have my Perry Williams speed camp. I started that back up. I had a program in North Carolina for quite a few years. I had to go and let it go because I came back to New York, New Jersey area to do some work. And this past summer, I did the Perry Williams Speed and Agility, working on kids and young men to learn about the fundamentals of speed training, speed making adjustments, explosion, quickness, and teaching them that kind of stuff. As you guys know, may not know, or people in your audience may not know this, or listening to all this, I was a track and field guy also at NC State. So I was a dual scholarship in college. And I ran the 55 meters. I broke the school record there. And then in 1980, many of you may know, may not know, I qualified for the Olympics. I was ranked #1 in the world in 1980. And I qualified for the Olympics. Jimmy Carter, former president of U.S., of the U.S., boycotted America. So we didn't get a chance to go to the Summer Olympics in 1980. So I qualified, but didn't get a chance to go. So, but my background from track and field was good. Now, and then one other thing I tell people about my track and field background, I qualified. There was a guy from the state of New Jersey named Carl Lewis, great Olympian, 9 or 10 gold medals. So I've always said, Carl ended up getting 9 or 10 gold medals in his career. I had to settle for 2 Super Bowl rings. So not a bad trade-off.
There you go. Well, again, Perry, listen, like I said, I think what's great about your story, successful on the field, just as successful off the field. You're showing there's life after football, life through education, higher education. It's a great story. Personally, I want to thank you. The 1980s, 90s Giants, were a big part of my life. My dad and I, when I talk about the Giants, I reference my dad. And, again, thanks for the memories and, thanks for coming on. This is absolute, like Jimmy said, we're pushing an hour here, probably our longest guest. I mean, we kind of revisited, the 80s and 90s, but I think more importantly, it's good to talk about what you're doing today because you are making an impact in the community. And, we thank you. We thank you for yesterday. We thank you for today. And we thank you for tomorrow, what you're doing for, for the community.
Thank you very much.
And with that, thanks again. To our listeners, I'm signing off for Jimmy. We'll see you soon on our next episode. And again, thanks for joining us. Again, Perry Williams, 2-time Super Bowl champion, New York Giant. Okay, higher education graduate student, graduate degree, and is really, really, really making a difference off the field as well. We thank you for joining us. Take care, everyone.